Hi, I'm Jamie Markle, publisher at ArtistsNetwork.com, and I'm here today with artist Stephanie Birdsall. Stephanie's been in the Artist Network studios the past few days, shooting 3 videos for us, 2 on pastel and 1 on oil, and we thought we'd have a little chat today to learn a little bit more about Stephanie and her work. So welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you, Jamie.
It's good to have you here. We've been friends for a few years now, so it's really great to have you here in the studio.
It's been great.
Good. So first of all, what interested you in painting, and why did you decide to become an artist? I know you've done some things before, so what kind of, what started you down this path?
Jamie, there's really nothing else I ever wanted to do. I've done other things, but they haven't been my preference. Since I was little, I was one of those scribblers who painted or drew in school. In grammar school, I used to paint on wooden blocks and sell them, actually, to my teachers and stuff. So I've always loved this. I've always wanted to do it.
So how did you make the jump from loving it and wanting to do it to making a career? Like, what was that process like?
You know, I actually went to an art school in England, came back, thought I'd take New York by storm. Didn't quite happen. Had some other jobs. And I think it's part of me. I think it's part of most artists. You really can't deny it. It's there all the time, and I felt like even when I wasn't painting, I was still learning, I was still observing, and it's probably 15 or 16 years ago, I just decided that it was time to go for it.
Well, you've done a great job. I know you've had a lot of success winning some awards and having some great representation. So in addition to exhibiting and selling your work, you also teach. So how did you decide to become a teacher? What prompted that?
That's something that was suggested to me. I actually had never really planned to teach, but it was suggested to me and the opportunity was offered to me, and I took it, and it just took off. I'll never forget, it was at actually the LPE in Pasadena. I'll never forget how nervous I was walking down the hallway to my first class and how scared I was, and it worked. And I feel like I've had the opportunity to study with so many amazing people and be mentored by them that I have a lot to offer. And the other thing I'm very conscious of is there's so many people in my age group that are just starting to paint and are in a hurry to learn, that I feel like what I can tell people is what it's taken me 20 years, but I can shortcut it for them. So hopefully they get it a little quicker.
And we met at that Learning and Product Expo,
That's right.
didn't we?
That was the first time
we met.
Yeah.
And I know that in addition to events like that, you've painted with the Putney Painters. And what an amazing opportunity that is. I mean, if you want to talk a little bit about that, I mean, what a group of fabulous people to be associated with.
That's one of the joys of my life. I actually met Richard Schmid at his retrospective in Pittsburgh, the Butler Museum.
The Butler.
And got to know he and his wife a little bit, and they invited me to come and sit for the Putney Painters, which I did as a model on a Saturday, and then was invited to come back and paint out with them, and then over the years kept coming back by invitation, and finally a couple of years ago was invited to be full-time. And it has been wonderful, and in fact, Richard is the one who got me painting in oil, because he said to me at one point, if you're doing this in pastel, why aren't you painting in oil? Well,
why not?
I don't know why. Let's give it a shot. So it's been a really fabulous experience, and it's an amazingly talented, wonderful, giving group of people.
Wow, so from model to model painter, that's a great jump.
It's fun, thank you.
So now you mentioned working in oil and pastel. So what are the benefits for artists to switching back and forth between mediums? Like what sort of spurs you to do that? Like, why?
Well, I love the dry medium and the layering, and I also have always loved the smell of oil and the feel of it. And actually, my limited palette in pastel is based on my oil palette, which is essentially Richard Schmid's oil palette, and I explain in one of my videos about how I predicated my selection on his oil palette and the color charts. And I love the mixing of it. And I actually have people come into my studio and they're shocked when they see a pastel because they thought it was oil. And if I use a non-glare museum glass, and so they don't see the glass and they think it's an oil painting. So I feel like I paint my pastels.
Interesting.
And my approach is very similar in both of them.
Very cool. So how do you decide which painting you're going to do in which medium? That's a very practical question that people are probably going to be interested in learning about.
I'll tell you a secret. I have done both at the same time. When I lived in Florida, there was a day that I had started a pastel down by the beach, and I had everything in my car. I happened to have 2 easels, and I had my oils and my pastels, thinking maybe I'd go on and do another painting. I set my pastels up, and the light was constant with the day before, and it changed. And it kept going back and forth. And I always have to ask myself, do I want to do this in pastel or in oil? And I decided when the sun's out, I'll continue with my pastel. When it's in, I'll do the oil. So I set them up next to each other, and it was perfect. I didn't have to make the decision. And very often I'll tackle the same subject in one or the other just because I love both of them. I love my subjects, and I want to try both.
Now, you mentioned your color charts or color palettes. Tell me a little bit more about those. Are they unique to you, or are they things that you share with your students? And how does somebody how do you develop your own, I guess is the question.
Your own color palette?
Your own color palette.
You know, I think that that's something that happens just through experience. My paints may be the same on my palette as anyone else's, but I'm finding that we all see color slightly differently. So supposedly I'm painting a painting of yellow pansies. My yellow pansies are probably going to be a slightly different yellow than yours are going to be. But what I find, and it's very interesting, and I think it takes a number of paintings to realize it, but I'm using that same yellow throughout my paintings. Even though I don't know that I am, I've decided that maybe that's how I see a particular type of yellow. And I think our palettes just develop by our vision, by doing it again and again, by mixing our colors. I think we just find that we like certain combinations better than others.
That sounds like a real evolution.
I think it is.
Yeah. Okay, one last question, and this is going to be the hard one.
Okay.
So your paintings evoke sort of a sense of time or mood. And that's one of the things that a lot of artists strive for. And I think you do it really well.
Thank you.
What's your secret?
I don't have one. I wish I did. You know what? I absolutely love and adore what I do. And I think if you feel that way about anything, that it's going to bring out the best in you. It's going to bring out it's going to bring your thoughtfulness out, your observation. You're going to put your whole self into it. And that's how I feel with my painting. It's everything outside my family, but it's just, I love it so much. I really just about don't ever want to be doing anything else, and I think that's just part of it.
Well, it really comes through in your work.
Thank you.
So, and your paintings are beautiful. So everybody, check out her work. She's got 3 DVDs coming out with Artists Network. You can find those at northlightshop.com, and you can learn more about Stephanie at stephaniebirdsall.com. Stephanie, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Jamie. It's great to see you and be here.
Good to see you too.